With a population of over 30 million people, Peru is the fourth biggest country in Latin America, and one of the richest countries in the world in terms of biodiversity and natural resources. In this vast Andean country, we can find, among other things, the biggest silver reserves, the third biggest zinc and copper reserves, as well as the sixth biggest gold reserves in the world. In today's video, we're going to be talking all about Peru. Escucheta Visualpolitik. Now, Peru is still a poor country, and there is still a lot of work to be done when it comes to its industrial framework. But despite this, Peru stands out among its Latin American neighbors as an example of reforms done right. And some say that if this process continues, we're soon going to be talking about Peru as a great Latin American power. Lima, its capital city, already has a higher GDP than Bolivia.
Economic evolution.
In the last decade, Peru has recorded the second biggest growth rate of all countries in Latin America. In the same period, its GDP has more than doubled. The investment rate has gone from 13% of GDP to 20%, and the poverty rate, this is the percentage of people who can't afford basic things like food, clothes, education, and healthcare, has dropped from rates of over 50% in the year 2000 to just 22% today. This is a reduction of more than half, which is not bad at all.
Peru is a country with the highest poverty reduction rate in Latin America during the last 13 years.
And hey, on top of all that, Peru is one of the least indebted countries in Latin America, and in fact is one of the least indebted in the whole world. This is due to a strong determination to use public funds responsibly. This is an achievement of Peru's previous governments, which were led by Ollanta Humala, Alan Garcia, and Alejandro Toledo. Because of these leaders, the public debt has been reduced to less than 50% since the year 2000. But better still, how did it reach a political consensus that maintains stability with the government's budget while also making pro-market policies?
Tomamos una medida en la que el principal perjudicado va a ser el MEF, porque va a recaudar menos. Piñas, pues, ¿qué vamos a hacer?
Now, this is probably one of the most interesting things about Peru, and it's also where they can teach other countries a valuable lesson. We recently made a video talking about the disaster that is Venezuela, but the interesting thing is that Peru's economic situation was pretty similar to Venezuela's in the 1980s. So let's have a look at what happened.
80s crisis.
In the 1970s and the beginning of the 1980s, the Peruvian government bet on boosting the Peruvian economy through public investment. They wanted to replace imports and restrict the sale of foreign products. To achieve this, they had to borrow money, which shot up the public debt. The results were so bad that when the oil crisis happened in 1979 and their economic growth slowed down, Peru's government started to have so many problems that in 1983 they had to suspend their payments to their debtors. In other words, they failed to pay their debts because they ran out of money, and the Peruvian government collapsed. From that moment, things went from bad to worse. And when Alan Garcia came to power in 1985, the entire country was a bit of a disaster. This is when the government started to intervene on a massive scale. They started fixing prices, and in the labor market, they reinforced the import replacement policies, which limited the number of products that were available to buy, and setting an average tariff which reached 66%.
Ahora sí siento que estamos haciendo una revolución. Ahora sí siento que estamos luchando por la justicia.
The public deficit went through the roof, and the informal economy became the norm. So even though there were more than 100 taxes, the state simply couldn't collect them. And on top of all that, the government had collapsed, so no one wanted to lend them money. Now you might be wondering, what exactly did Peru do? Well, they started to print more money, which basically made the inti, the Peruvian currency, worth about as much as monopoly money. As if all of that wasn't enough for Peru to deal with, they also had to deal with the narco-traffic and terrorist actions by groups such as MRTA and Sendero Luminoso, which were causing tens of thousands of deaths all across the country.
El MRTA ubica su centro de operaciones en la zona de la selva nororiental. y busca una alianza estratégica con las bandas de narcotraficantes.
Well, what was the result of all this? Well, by the end of the decade, GDP had dropped by 25%. Further, its GDP per capita was similar to the 1960s, and inflation every year was about 7,500%. It was at this point that the World Bank recognized Peru as one of the poorest countries in the world.
Año 85, ¿cuánto costaba un kilito de frijoles? 6 intis nada más. 6 intis. Ahí entró Alan, ¿eh? Usted iba con 6 intis y compraba su kilito de frijoles. Cuando terminó el Alan el año 90, ¿cuánto costaba un kilo de frijoles? 122.300 intis, un kilo de frijoles.
The situation was so grave that the World Bank estimates that if this had never happened, Peru's GDP and purchasing power parity would today be similar to Italy's, Spain's, or South Korea's. No more, no less. In many ways, the crisis that Peru faced was very similar to the crisis facing Venezuela today. For example, you can see lots of public spending, plenty of taxes, lots of printing money, a drop in the price of commodities, and also plenty of violence. So when we released our video about Venezuela, many people asked what we would do to solve the problem. Well, let's have a look at what Peru did.
A way to prosperity.
In 1990, a strong plan of reforms and economic stabilization began. And in fact, this is the same plan that really does still exist today. It passed through the following stages. In order to slow down inflation, first of all, the inti was replaced by a new currency, the new sol. In addition to this, the dollarization of the economy was allowed, which is essentially where US dollars are used in place of a national currency. From that moment, monetary stability in the country became a national priority. The tax system was changed and greatly simplified with the elimination of 64 taxes. Further, the pension system was also reformed, and the Chilean system was used as a model, but there were also many improvements made. This is actually quite a controversial topic and something that we're going to be addressing in a future Visualpolitik video, so don't forget to subscribe. Further, an ambitious program to attract investors and privatize public utilities was put into motion. Soon, companies such as Aero Peru, Electro Lima, and the Peruvian telephone company were put into private hands. A trade openness strategy was put into place, which reduced that ridiculously high 66% tariff to something closer to 1.5%. At the same time as this happened, numerous free trade deals were signed, including very important ones with the United States as well as the European Union. Then in 2002, a gradual decentralization of power started happening. The result of this was that most public investment spending today happens with regions and municipalities. And finally, and probably the most important point, was their commitment to budgetary stability. This is something that since it was put into place, every government has respected.
Perú registró un superávit fiscal del 7% en el primer trimestre del año. Esto como consecuencia del aumento en los ingresos del gobierno y un crecimiento económico sostenido.
Actually, in 1999, a law was put into place called the Fiscal Transparency and Prudence Law. This restricts the discretionary power of governments to spend more than they receive. This includes corrective elements for public deficit situations. Many experts on the subject contest that this is one of the most important laws in the history of Peru. But it's not all roses. Don't think that we've forgotten the dark side of Peru. This was the 1990s and Alberto Fujimori's regime. This was an authoritarian regime, and the president of it is now serving a 25-year jail term. He was convicted for crimes against humanity and corruption. So what's important to keep in mind is the situation that Venezuela faces today is similar to the situation that Peru faced. So keep in mind, there's always a way out.
Peru, today and tomorrow.
So now you might have in your mind the question, why is Peru still a poor country today? As we said at the beginning of this video, the institutional shortfalls and the challenges that Peru faces today are many. Among them, we can't stress enough the high degree of legal uncertainty and corruption. This is something that we can definitely see with the death squad's case. This is where, under Humala's regime from 2011 to 2015, a group of policemen killed innocent people for money. Those killed included a general and a major from Peru's national police. Further, there are extremely high levels of crime, and there's also the chance that the mining industry will face the same rentier problems that Chile faces today. Not to mention, there is a very sharp difference between the living standards in different regions. On the 5th of June 2016, the second round of presidential elections were held, where Pedro Pablo Kuczynski was elected as the new president of the Republic of Peru. These elections were the closest in Peru's history, and Kuczynski beat out his rival Keiko Fujimori, who, by the way, is Alberto Fujimori's daughter. He beat her by just 40,000 votes. The policies announced by Kuczynski include to keep working on the agenda of pushing competitiveness and trade openness. In this regard, he has pledged to reduce tax by 10% for SMEs, that's small or medium-sized enterprises, as well as battle against bureaucracy, remove unnecessary regulations, and to pursue regional economic integrations, similar to the TPP or RCEP led by China. If Kuczynski gets to remain at the helm and fight all of the problems that are affecting Peru, despite his relative political weakness because of a not very friendly Congress, I'm sure that the growth of Peru will continue and will remain a leader in growth for Latin America. And maybe in a few years, Peru, which is a young nation with an average age of 27, could follow the example of the Asian tigers and get transformed into a major global power. So that is our opinion here at Visualpolitik, and we would love to know what you think. Will Peru be able to leave poverty behind and become an economic powerhouse? And is Kuczynski the ideal person to achieve this? Let us know your opinion in the comments below, and also if you did like this video, please do hit that like button below, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos every Monday and Thursday. And I'll see you next time, or as they say in Quechua, tu panam chiksama.